Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Tonight I'm going to be talking about hormones. And it's alarming how many I meet who are experiencing a hormonal imbalance. And sometimes it's the missing link in the health. I've met some people that say, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm living right, I'm eating well, I'm exercising. What's wrong? And I do find that it's the missing link with many. So what I'm going to do this evening, I'm going to begin by going through the symptoms of a hormonal imbalance. Then I'm going to show you how the monthly cycle should run. And then I'm going to show you how you can bring back the balance. So let us begin by showing you how the hormone imbalance affects women. So with a woman, these are some of the most common symptoms. A woman getting her periods at a very young age. Normal is 16 to 18, but you hardly ever hear that today. We're getting young girls that are getting their periods at 8, 9, 10 years of age. So when a girl gets her periods at 9, she's developing breasts at 8. This is far too young. It's an indication that there's something drastically wrong. Another symptom of a hormonal imbalance is very painful periods, very heavy periods, premenstrual tension, tender breasts, breast cancer, fibroids in the uterus, cysts in the ovaries, endometriosis, thyroid problems, depression, heart disease. These are all symptoms of a hormonal imbalance. Migraines at period time, another symptom. Hot flushes, weight gain, no desire for sex, especially getting to the 50s and 60s. What are some of the symptoms of a man having a hormonal imbalance? With a man, it can be low sperm count. We've got many couples today that cannot have children, and one of the reasons is low sperm count. Another reason is it's called penile dysfunction, or PD, inability to hold an erection. The current figures are 50% of men over the age of 50 are struggling with this. Where's my little resident why? There is a reason for this. These things don't just happen. That defies Newton's third law of motion. To every action there is an equal and an opposite reaction. Another symptom for a man can be prostate problems. We didn't know what the word prostate meant 20 years ago. It's almost a household name today. Too much of the female hormone in a man can cause a man to be effeminate, and too much of the male hormone in a woman can cause a woman to be masculine. These are some of the symptoms of a hormonal imbalance. So as you can see, it is widespread. So what is the answer? To understand what the answer is, it's important to understand how the role that the hormones play in the body. The old proverb, Proverbs 14 verse 6 states that knowledge is easy to him that understands. So let me give you a basic knowledge on the hormones and their role in the body. To do this, we're going to look at how the monthly cycle runs in a woman's cycle. The sex hormones are made from cholesterol. Cholesterol is a very important lipid in the human body. You can have too low cholesterol levels and you can have too high. Balance is essential. From cholesterol, the body makes another hormone which is called pregnenolone. Pregnenolone is a hormone that the body makes from progesterone, from cholesterol, and from pregnenolone, progesterone is made. Progesterone is a key hormone because it's from progesterone that estrogen is made, often called the female hormone. From progesterone, testosterone is made. Testosterone is often called the male hormone. And from progesterone, our adrenal hormones are made. Now these are your fight and your flight hormones, often called the stress hormones. Now in a man, the number one hormone is progesterone, number 2 hormone, testosterone, and number 3 hormone is estrogen. But in a woman, number 1 hormone, again, is progesterone. Number 2 hormone, estrogen. Number 3 is testosterone. You see, men and women have the same hormones. It's just in different amounts. To understand the cycle, I'm going to explain it like a dance. You see, it is like a dance. Different players come onto the stage at different times of the month. So let's have a look at this cycle. This is the 28-day cycle that a woman experiences. Let me introduce you to the star players in this dance or this cycle. Progesterone is one of the key players, and in this dance, progesterone is wearing a green dress, and progesterone's role in the body is that of happy hormone. It has a few roles, which we will be discussing as we go, but that's its nickname. It's called happy hormone. The other player in the dance is estrogen. And in the dance, estrogen is going to be wearing a red dress. And estrogen's role in the human body is that of cell proliferator, causing massive cell growth. It is estrogen that causes the skinny young girl to develop into a beautiful, shapely woman. I liken estrogen to fire and water, good slave, bad master. It is estrogen that causes the skinny young girl to develop into a beautiful, shapely woman, but if that beautiful, shapely woman retains too much estrogen, she can actually get out of shape the other way. Estrogen is actually a family of estrogen. You get estrone, and estrone is called E1. Then estradiol, and estradiol is called E2. And then estriol, and estriol is called E3. Now these two top estrogens have strong cell proliferator action. But estriol is a delicate estrogen, so we're going to give that a little red heart as we go through our illustration. Day 1 of the monthly cycle is the day that a woman begins to menstruate. And day 1 of the monthly cycle, progesterone levels are low. So progesterone is backstage, so to speak. So we'll put that at a low. Day 1 of the monthly cycle, estrogen levels are low too. But by day 7, estrogen levels are rising. And by day 11, estrogen is the star player in the dance of the hormones. Let's go to the stage where the dance is played out, which is the reproductive organs of a woman's body. So this is the uterus, this is the cervix, this is the birth canal. These are the fallopian tubes. And these are the filaments on the end of the fallopian tubes. There's a ligament here that holds the ovary. So what effect does estrogen have at this time of the month in the uterus? Estrogen is causing massive cell growth on the lining of the uterus, causing the blood nest to develop in its role as cell proliferator. Estrogen is also causing massive cell growth in the ovaries, causing an egg to develop. Estrogen is causing also a form of lubricant to be released in the birth canal. By day 14, a fully developed egg bursts forth from the ovaries. The filaments on the end of the fallopian tube pull that egg up into the fallopian tube, and up it moves. You see, the fallopian tubes are ever moving like this, pushing that egg up, up, up. There is no need for estrogen anymore. So estrogen's given the message, you can go backstage now. Now the hole where the egg bursts forth develops a blister. It's one of the little miracles in the human body. And this little blister is called the corpus luteum. I've written it in green because it is one of the main sites of progesterone production in a woman's body. Can you see how important it is for a woman to ovulate every month? Because when a woman ovulates, that little hole develops the corpus luteum, which is maintaining progesterone levels. And you can see by my illustration the importance of progesterone. It is the key hormone. It's the precursor for the other hormones. And so by day 14, progesterone levels begin to rise. Progesterone is now the star player in the dance. What effect does progesterone have? Progesterone has a ripening effect on the lining of the uterus, putting the finishing touches on the uterus. I liken progesterone to the plasterers and the painters. Progesterone also heightens a woman's mood at this time of the month as the happy hormone, to the point of increasing her sexual desire at this time of the month. But progesterone has another effect, and that is on the cervix. The cervix is like the little gateway into the uterus. So let me magnify it to show you. Here is what the cervix usually looks like. It has two lips with a mucus plug. Under the effect of progesterone at this time of the month, the lips come up a little tighter, and a special form of lubricant is released around the cervix, designed specifically to facilitate the entry of sperm up into the uterus. So as you can see, the stage is set at this time of the month for the entry of man. Did you know that between 200 and 500 million sperm are released with one ejaculation? That's phenomenal, isn't it? It's the smallest cell in the human body, is the sperm cell. Now, if the sperm meet this cervix, very difficult to gain entry. But if the sperm meet this cervix, this lubricant literally grabs that sperm and shoots it up into the uterus, and it's got a long way to go, long journey. And some of the sperm go down the wrong road. There's no road map. And they basically die and are absorbed and taken away through the bloodstream. But some of the sperm go down the right road, and aha, they've found their prize, which is of course, the egg. I saw a photograph one day at a seminar of 15 sperm all trying to gain entry into one egg, but only one can. Although sometimes if the twins share the placenta, that's indicated that 2 sperm got in. It is estimated within a couple of days of the sperm and the egg uniting, there's the division of the 2 cells. Now what's phenomenal is, with the division of that union to the first 2 cells, the DNA of a new human being is perfectly intact. A new human being that has never been and will never be again. Isn't that phenomenal? A lot of discussion about when life begins. When you think of that, it's almost at conception, because there is the potential of a human being that will never be or has been. It takes probably about every 7 days, there's another division, and then there's another division. And that gives this little union time to travel up, 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 and then settle in. Up it goes, and it settles down into the lining of the uterus. You know, I was reading a book about this. It's fascinating what science can tell you today. But there's a certain time of the month, and only at this certain time of the month do the cells relax a little bit to allow that little union, that little fetus, to grab into the lining of the uterus. I was reading how little things like hockey straps shoot out and pull that little union in and settle into the lining of the uterus. It is progesterone that binds the molecules of the fetus to the lining of the uterus. So when a woman has multiple miscarriages, can you see that the indication is that she is low in progesterone. As soon as that union takes place, there is a change in the hormones. Progesterone soars 200%. And the estrogen that rises in pregnancy is the delicate estrogen, estriol. So these are the change in the hormones at pregnancy. And often we say when someone's pregnant, oh, they're just blossoming. Do you have that saying? You can see why. Happy hormone levels are high. I was pregnant or breastfeeding non-stop for 14 years. I breastfed 3 months into every pregnancy. Some people say, oh, you poor thing. I said, oh, no, it was wonderful. Progesterone levels are nice and high. Mind you, I am a lover of babies and have from a very young child been a lover of babies. But the happy hormone is what carries the woman through there. Now, if a woman did not feel like that in pregnancy, what would that indicate? It would indicate that she was deficient in progesterone. And we're going to have a look at why that would happen in a minute. So let's say conception did not take place. Then by day 26, progesterone levels are dropping. Progesterone's going backstage, so to speak. By day 26, estrogen levels are dropping. And when both of those levels drop, the blood supply to the uterus is cut. And when the blood supply to the uterus is cut, then the blood nest comes away, and once again we are at day 1 of the monthly cycle. That's how the cycle should look. Unfortunately, in many cases it does not look like that, and we're going to look at why in a minute. But before I do, I want to tell you for a moment the effect of sperm in a woman's body. Sperm is an alien to a woman's body, and when sperm enters a woman's body, her immune system rises to attack. But when sperm goes through the prostate gland of a man, it takes on an immune suppressant property. And so when woman's immune system rises to attack, the immune suppressant property of sperm knocks back her immune system and sperm survives. Otherwise, we would never be here. But woman's body has memory. And every time her husband enters her, her immune system rises and goes, oh, it's husband, we'll just stand back. And so sperm is allowed to enter. But can you imagine how devastating it can be on a woman's immune system when she has multiple partners? What's a pap smear? A pap smear is a scrape or a little nick taken out of the cervix to test for abnormal cells. Let's say a woman has a pap smear, and then that night she is intimate with her husband. Her immune system is busy healing the nick, but it has to step back in the presence of sperm. And it happens just before the woman falls asleep, so the sperm lay there all night. Her immune system cannot go back on the job. Until the morning, when she arises, gravity causes sperm to come away, then the immune system goes back on their job. Let's say she's a very sexually active woman, and this is happening 2 nights out of 3. 6 months later, she goes back to the doctor to have another pap smear. They happen to take a scrape on the same site of her original pap smear. What's the result of the tests? Abnormal cells. What caused the abnormal cells? The first pap smear that was never allowed to heal. Women should be told that for 4 weeks after a pap smear not to allow their husband to enter, not allow sperm to come in. Would it take 4 weeks to heal? Not in a healthy woman. But there are some women who have too much coffee, too much sugar, go to bed too late, never exercise, don't drink water, don't eat nourishing food. It would take 4 weeks in that woman. In a healthy woman, it should be healed in about 10 days. One lady said, my husband can't wait 4 weeks. I said, well, he needs to either master the art of withdrawal or he needs to wear a condom, but the sperm should not enter until that pap smear is healed. So what's causing the imbalance? 1957, The first contraceptive pill was introduced to women. 1960s was called the sexual revolution. Women wanted to have sex without having a pregnancy, a baby. And so they took the pill. What is the pill? This is the list of what's causing this imbalance. Well, the pharmaceutical companies grow acres and acres of Mexican wild yam. And that Mexican wild yam contains a plant chemical called digestion. And in laboratory, digestion can be converted to progesterone. The pharmaceutical companies cannot patent this. They can only patent something new. So they add a few more atoms in one area and come up with a synthetic estrogen. They add a few more atoms in another area and come up with a synthetic progesterone. These are the synthetic hormones that are in the contraceptive pill. And when a woman applies those hormones to her body, well, she takes it as a pill, those synthetic hormones come in and they interfere with this biochemical pathway that the body uses to make its own hormones, and that causes a disruption. And the body goes, what's going on? Must be pregnant. That's the only change or disruption it knows. And so what the body does is it stops releasing the egg. So the woman doesn't fall pregnant. Now the woman takes the pill for 3 weeks a month. And in that 3 weeks, the body thinks it's pregnant, so it doesn't produce the egg, and so it doesn't produce the corpus luteum. And then for the week that the woman takes the sugar pill, the body goes, what's going on now? Remember this amazing body with its ability to adapt and adjust. What's happening now? Oh, mustn't be pregnant. So it does a token bleed. And then a week later, the pill starts again. What's going on now? Must be pregnant. So, can you see what's happening? Can you see the disruption that is caused in the body? Let me show you. Month after month on the pill, with its synthetic estrogen, and remember, this is how the cycle should be. Progesterone is the precursor for estrogen. Month after month on the pill, no ovulation, no corpus luteum. Where's progesterone going? Month after month on the pill with its synthetic estrogen, where's estrogen going? We have a situation, sadly too common today, called estrogen dominance, progesterone deficiency. Good slave, bad master is now the master. What does the cycle look like now? Where's estrogen? Up there, with its strong cell proliferator action, causing strong cell proliferator action in the uterus, causing the endometrium, which is the lining of the uterus, to proliferate. And so it starts to wander all through the abdominal wall, little pockets of endometrium. It's called endometriosis. Have you heard of it? 70 years ago, there were supposedly 21 cases in America. Today, 10 million. When did it all begin? Well, it was about the 1960s. What began in the 1960s? It was the contraceptive pill. No wonder Elaine Hollingsworth, an author in Australia who wrote a book, How to Eliminate the Sickness Industry, she calls the pill the mass murder of millions of women. Strong words. As we go through this, you will not be surprised at her conclusions. So now, with the estrogen up high, we've not only got endometriosis, and by the way, a woman rang me with endometriosis, she's 25. Her doctor told her that she'll be all right when she goes through menopause. What's that, 25 more years of suffering? You see what happens with endometriosis? When the levels drop on day 26 and the blood supply to the uterus is cut and the blood nest comes away, all these little pockets bleed, but they have nowhere to go. and they cause some excruciating pain in a woman. And so what medicine's answer is to go in and cut away or diathermy or burn out all those little pockets. But if you don't turn the tap off, what's going to happen? It's just going to keep coming back. One young girl told me that she was 17 and she had very heavy periods, very painful. She had the Gardasil vaccination that many teenage girls get that supposedly guards against cervical cancer. You've heard of it? Since that vaccination that she had 2 months previous, she is now getting hot flushes. 17 years of age. She's getting hot flushes and she has to be admitted to hospital every time she gets her period and knocked out. The pain is so great. 17. I was reading an article by the woman who basically put together Gardasil. And she said, it is not a prevention of cervical cancer. And yet in Australia, schoolgirls at the age of about 16, I think it is, are all supposed to have this vaccine. And they're told if they don't have it, they will get cervical cancer. So what do? Who wants cervical cancer? There's even been some deaths from this vaccine. That's why knowledge is power. And the information to know about these things is so vital. What are some other things this high estrogen is causing? Massive cell growth on the ovaries. There's the cysts on the ovaries. Massive cell growth in the uterus causing fibroids in the uterus. Massive cell growth in the breasts causing cysts in the breasts, even to the point of breast cancer. Massive cell growth in the torso area. The lady just cannot lose weight. If estrogen levels are high and the woman's trying to lose weight, she's almost fighting a losing battle. And what's happening to her happy hormone? Ooh, it's down. Here it is, way down here. And how does that woman feel the week before her periods? Watch out, she'll bite your head off. My husband used to have a secretary, and you would go at any time and you'd say, could you please photocopy this? Sure. You'd go in this time of the month, could you photocopy this? I'm already got enough to do. You almost couldn't step into the office at that time of the month. And how many women and men sadly think that is normal? I never ask a woman if she has trouble with her periods anymore because the answer is, just the norm. Then I say, what do you think's the norm? Well, heavy periods, painful periods, premenstrual tension. That is not normal. Isn't that the best news you've heard all day? And I'm going to show you how you can bring the balance back. I have seen many women conquer their depression by going on a program to balance the hormones and once again boost happy hormone. It's scary, isn't it? It is said that there aren't many natural cycles present now. So why? Number one is the pill. Who went on the pill? What was the first generation introduced to? The baby boomers. How old are the baby boomers now? They're in their 50s, 60s. They're going through menopause. How are they faring? Hot flushes. What causes hot flushes? Estrogen. High estrogen is It is a capillary, that's a combination of cell and capillary, by the way. It's a capillary dilator. It dilates the capillaries so that the blood rushes to the skin and the woman is suddenly very, very hot. Capillaries. She's having hot flushes. One lady said, I get 2 hot flushes a day, I can handle it. Another lady said, I get it every 10 minutes, I cannot handle it. Weight gain in the torso area. No desire for sex. And when the woman has sex, it's very painful because the lubricant is not there. The lining of the birth canal, the vagina, the skin gets very thin and it's very painful. She has no desire. She's sad with lack of happy hormone, and her husband's secretary is looking better all the time. That's scary, isn't it? It's actually tragic. And she knows life is not good. So she goes to the doctor and he puts her on hormone replacement therapy. What's hormone replacement therapy? More synthetic hormones. Body goes, oh, what's happening now? Must be pregnant. Instead of the estrogen causing capillary dilation, it goes into the internal organs. So the hot flushes stop. Remember what I said last night? The body's knocking. HRT goes along. Can you see that? It hasn't cured the problem at all. It's just silenced the knock. And I've had this story too many times. A woman says, I went on the pill 5 years before I had my babies. I'm a baby boomer. Every girl I knew was on it. No one ever questioned it. She had her babies. She went through menopause. Terrible hot flushes. How many women realise it's because of that pill they took way back then? The doctor puts her on hormone replacement therapy, takes the hot flushes away so that the loud knock is, can't hear it now. The flushes stop. Doesn't take any of the other symptoms away. She still has no desire for sex. It's still very uncomfortable. She's still got a weight gain. She's still sad. Oh, so what does the doctor put her on now? Antidepressants. Another knock just gets silenced. 6 years later, she has a lump in her breast. She goes to the doctor. It's breast cancer. He takes her off hormone replacement therapy immediately. Why? He knows it causes breast cancer. So you say to the physician, why do you do that? This is his answer. She was suffering and it brought her relief, and that is true. And he says, not every woman who's on HRT will get breast cancer, and that is true too. But I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in playing Russian roulette with my life. You ask a woman, what would you prefer, hot flushes or breast cancer? Bring on the flushes, at least I can have a fan. You see, the pharmaceutical company cannot patent progesterone. And that's why in medicine, physicians are not taught what I'm telling you now, because the pharmaceutical company holds a large piece of the pie. And I'm not criticising that physician. He does not know of another alternative. Most people think this, you suffer or you take the drug with its side effect. And tonight I will show you a third option, which is the most intelligent option, which is just working with the needs of the body and the way the body runs. I think it was 2000, was it? Time magazine did their whole article on HRT in Australia and in America. I read both articles, and right at the end it says there is no known alternative. Not medically, but naturally, herbally, there definitely is. But there are some women who've never been on the pill or HRT. There's more. Number 2, what causes a chicken to be fully developed at 5 weeks of age? It's growth stimulants. Now in Australia, it is against the law you don't call them chooks, do you? We call them chooks. We call it a chook farmer. But you call it hen, yeah, or chickens. It's against the law for them to give their chickens, I'll use your language, growth stimulants. So what they've done is, to get around that, they've genetically modified the chickens to produce more estrogen. and whether the person eats the chicken and the egg from the chicken that's had growth stimulants, or whether the human being eats the chicken that's been genetically modified, they will still be getting that high estrogen as they eat the chicken and the egg. This explains the 6'4" sons to 5'2" mothers and 5'9" fathers. Where did that come from? This explains the young 10-year-old girls with very large breasts from flat-chested mothers. It's these growth stimulants. When I was a little girl, we ate chicken once a year, Christmas Day. I'm a 5th-generation Australian with Scottish descent. So I was brought up on the very traditional Australian diet, very much English-Scottish descent. Chicken once a year, Christmas Day. When I was 15 years of age, Kentucky Fried Chicken came to town. And we travelled all the way to Campbelltown, the nearest city, to have a look at Kentucky Fried Chicken. Also Henny Penny, a few outlets like that, and that is when Australians began to eat chicken more on a daily basis. I know when I say I'm a vegetarian, some people say, oh, you just eat chicken and fish. I say, no, I don't eat any meat. A lot of Australians think meat is red meat. But the chicken and the fish and the meat, that's all flesh food. It is all meat. And if you are interested in eating chickens, I suggest you go and visit where they grow. You will not be able to get within about a mile of the sheds, or you'll want to vomit. The stench is so bad. And if you go to the slaughterhouse where they're being killed, that'll again turn you off it. If you have a look at how they're fed, how they're grown, you will be turned off it. If a person wants to eat chicken, I say it must be organic and ideally not often. Well, what about fish? Is fish safe? Well, in Australia, in Sydney Harbour, fishing was banned about 5 years ago now because the children of the fishermen had high levels of mercury and dioxin in their blood. Now they're finding today, they're finding fish with female tendencies and male fish with female fish with male tendencies. You see, when you got 80% of the women on HRT or the pill, they go to the toilet, the sewage goes out to sea, the fish are feeding on obviously the sewage is treated. You haven't got raw sewage going out to sea, but the metabolites, the breakdown from these are still going out and the fish are feeding on them. You've also got chemical waste going into and of course this is the third one. You've got chemical waste from industry going out into the waterways, and a lot of chemicals break down to substances that mimic estrogen. I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, that's fish. If you love fish, my suggestion is make it a rarity and go for your smaller. What about red meat? Do you know it is said that red meat is actually safer than the white meats today? But in Australia, it is against the law for cattle farmers to give their cattle growth stimulants. But we had a cattle farmer's wife do our program. She said once a fortnight they knock on our door. The pharmaceutical companies pushing the growth stimulant. She said, we don't do it, but most do. You see, the sooner the cattle grow, the sooner they get to the market, and of course more money. She came to do our retreat about a year ago. She said 5 months before market, if they stop the growth stimulant, it's not picked up in the blood test. But we had a lady do our program about a month ago now who works in the abattoirs. She said, no, it's 5 days now. So they can stop the growth stimulant 5 days before market and it's not picked up in the blood test. But it's still in the tissues which people are eating. Lentils are sounding more attractive all the time, aren't they? So if it's in the meat, it's in the products. Chemicals. In estrogen, in its molecular structure, there's a phenyl ring. And that phenyl ring is what unlocks the door into the estrogen receptor side in the cell. Well, many chemicals break down, and the byproduct of this breakdown has this phenyl ring. Plastics also today have this phenyl ring. What makes plastic soft is nonylphenol. And the plastic that lines tins is bisphenol A, or often known as BPA. Can you see what both of these plastics have? They have the phenyl ring. And that's the key that unlocks the door to get into the estrogen receptor on the cell. Dr. Anna Zotto, she's an endocrinologist in the USA. She was growing cancerous breast tissue in her laboratory one day in flasks. Every time she injected it with estrogen, it would grow. She'd stop injecting with estrogen, it stopped growing. She came in one morning and overnight it had grown, and she had not injected it with estrogen. She scratched her head. She was a true scientist, investigating the whys. She rang up the company that provide the flasks. She said, "Have you changed your flasks?" They said, "Yes. We are now have a flask that has a nonylphenol in it." So the nonylphenols in that plastic flask was feeding the estrogen, or was feeding the breast cancer just like estrogen. They're estrogen mimickers. Plastic is everywhere today, isn't it? Now, one of the most dangerous is when that plastic is heated. So this is your water bottles in a hot car. Also, when you continually use that water bottle again and again and again, with every use, a little bit more is breaking down. That's why it's important to get a water bottle that's either a hard plastic, you know, you can't squeeze it. And I think I see a couple of bottles there. Is that, can you mind holding that up? Yep, you see it's the hard plastic. And that does not, you probably find it's got BPA on the bottom of it. It hasn't got the phenyl in it. Or you see my green one over there is a stainless steel water bottle. Very important to check that the children are drinking out of these healthy water bottles. Because you know, we are subjected to enough as it is without adding more. Be cautious of pouring hot leftover soup into a plastic takeaway container. Now, it is handy to freeze in plastic, so what I do is I may put my leftover soup in the fridge in a ceramic bowl with a plate on top. When it's cold, then I might put it into the plastic takeaway container and freeze that. So it's mainly when the plastic is heated that these phenols are released a little bit more. I think it's impossible to eliminate plastic, but just be aware of the danger. As much as possible, store your food in glass or stainless steel or ceramic. Herbicides, insecticides, pesticides. They all break down to metabolites that mimic estrogen. In fact, you might have heard the term xenoestrogens. Yeah? Xenoestrogens. There's more. Number 4. Last night we looked at the role of fungus, mould, in causing disease. And there is a mould waste called zearalenone. And zearalenone has an estrogenic effect.
That's a mold?
It's a mould waste. Because there is a mould that gives off the mould waste. One mould can give off 2 or 3 different mould wastes, and they have different effects on body parts. 1.5 different molds, yeasts and fungus have been documented, and 1,000 of those are known to cause disease in human beings. Last night I talked about aspergillus, which is the mould, and it gives off aflatoxin, which is the mould waste that directly affects the liver. But this zearalenone, it has an estrogenic effect, to the point where it is used sometimes as an anabolic agent, causing growth stimulants, causing a growth stimulant in animals. And it's called Zerilol. In Puerto Rico in the 80s, there was an epidemic of children going through puberty between was 5 and 10 years of age. And they traced it to the anabolic agent, Zerilol, that was being fed to cows as a growth stimulant. And so the woman would eat the meat in pregnancy, and that was affecting the hormones of her unborn child. So when her child got to the age of 5, 6, 7, 8 years of age, they were going through puberty. Now, because it's a mould waste and not what they thought as a chemical, they thought it was safer. So they were feeding it to the cows even a week before slaughter. What a pity that this epidemic of children going through puberty at that age, that had to happen before they realised it. Now, grains commonly have zearalenone. And in America, in Australia, grain is tested for zearalenone levels. Now, a certain amount is allowed because they say, well, a little bit won't hurt. But can you see the grain that is used in America and Australia more than any other grain is the wheat? And the structure of the wheat is such that it gets the blood sugar level up quite quickly. So you combine this with this wheat grain, it's this hybridised wheat grain, is in a silo, and it's a cold frosty morning, and it's a hot sunny day, moisture is there. And can you see this high sweet composition of the grain can actually feed the mould on the grain, and you get this vicious cycle. Let me show you the 4 different estrogens. So these are 4 cells. I want to show you the effect of these 4 different estrogens. These are the estrogen receptor sites. This one is the zearalenone. Sorry, no, not the zearalenone. I'm getting my Zs and my Xs mixed up. This is the xenoestrogens. So xeno is basically written like that. So xenoestrogens are 20,000 times stronger than human estrogen. Here's the human. So how big are the xenoestrogens, the ones that come from the chemicals, the plastics, the herbicides? They're huge. And remember, they've got the key. They just come right in. They don't even knock. They don't have to. They've got the key. And the xenoestrogens are 20,000 times stronger than the human estrogen. So how big's the human estrogen? It's about that big. What's this one? This is the zearalenone. We'll just do a Z here. It's about 1,000 times stronger than human. So it's basically like that. Human estrogen is 20,000 times stronger than plant estrogen. So how big's plant estrogen? It's a tiny little slip of a thing that just sits into the receptor site like that. Now, what is interesting about the plant is it knocks. So it comes to the receptor site and it knocks. Excuse me, can I come in? The cell says, no, we've already got too much. So plant estrogen says, well, I'll just sit at the door. And the benefit of this is that this cannot get into there. Can you see what the plant estrogens do? They play a protective role. Now, if they knock and say, can I come in? And the cell says, oh, please do, we're a little low. Medicine calls it synergism, working with the needs of the body. In Psalm 104, verse 14, the Bible says that God gave herbs for the service of man. It's the same thing, serving the body. Can you see the power of the plant estrogens? And Do you read articles that say if you've got breast cancer, prostate cancer, don't eat soy? Have you read that? Because of the estrogens. They're such delicate little things. And they're just working with the needs of your body. But the soybean grown in America today is called Roundup Ready. Yeah? Why is it called Roundup Ready? It's been genetically modified, yeah, to resist Roundup. One farmer told me that 5 times before harvest, the field is sprayed. Every time it's sprayed, all the weeds die and the soybean keeps growing. Scary, isn't it? So what have we got in that soybean? How many doses of Roundup? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is a dangerous soybean. That soybean will increase prostate cancer. That soybean will increase breast cancer, but it's not the natural estrogens, it's the xenoestrogens. Can you see that? A friend of mine did a thesis on the soy, and people ask her all the time, tell us the story on soy. She said, it's really easy. God made it good, man mucked it up, end of story. It would be a pity to throw the soybean out because it has the most potent anti-cancer properties of any food. So if you eat soybean, and I think I had a beautiful tofu dish today at Country Life restaurant, and they use organic. You see, if you use organic, you are safe, because if an organic farmer uses genetically modified seed, he loses his organic status. You see that? So you just have to look for the organics. The illustration I have given you here explains it. It is not understood by many people. So I get reams of information saying the soybean's terrible. And then I say, well, which soybean are you talking about? Because as far as the east is from the west is the organically grown non-GMO soybean to the GMO soybean that has been grown with herbicides and insecticides. You see that? I read one article where the lady said as proof that there was a farmer who got some soy food for the birds, and the birds stopped reproducing. And the birds started to grow tumours, and they used that as a reason that humans shouldn't eat soy. But you see, birds shouldn't eat soy. And then I said, well, what sort of soybean was used in this experiment? I said, this experiment would not stand up under scientific investigation because you're not stating what the bean was, whether it was organic or non-organic or GMO or non-GMO. It was not stated whether it was organically grown or non-organically grown. It was not stated whether it was the whole bean or the isolate. Can you see why you have to investigate a little bit further when these claims are made? Why are these things so? Remember your 6 trusty serving men? I have 6 trusty serving men. They taught me all I know. Their names are what, why, when, where, how, and who. When people say, this is no good, I just put that on the shelf and consider it until I totally understand why. Our decisions that we make should be made according to reason, intellect, and judgment. And I'll be talking about that tomorrow night when I talk on the mind. So which is the one we most need to fear? And will you ever read an article in the newspaper, if you've got breast cancer or prostate cancer, don't use chemicals. Only eat organically grown food. Don't use plastic. Will you read that article? No, you will not. No. So as you can see, there's estrogen and there's estrogens. But this one is particularly dangerous because it has that phenyl ring, which is the key that unlocks the door to get it straight in. Last night I gave the illustration of a strong rope. And a strong man cannot break that rope. But a little tiny mouse can come along and start nibbling at the threads. And the strong rope that the strong man could not break, that little mouse can break by nibbling at the threads. And I find when people have a hormonal imbalance, it might be just one thing, or it might be a little bit of all of them, or it might be just two of them. That's why when this girl said to me one day, but my mother's never been on the pill, I've never been on the pill, I am a vegetarian. So I said to her, well, it's not the pill and it's not the meat, is it? The detective has to stay on and find a little bit further. Maybe it's exposure to chemicals. Maybe it's exposure to plastics, herbicides, insecticides. Maybe it is overdoing the wheat, which is the grain that is the most commonly infected with zearalenone. Can you see that? Now, what does the cycle look like when you've got this imbalance with a man? With a man, when estrogen levels high, testosterone can displace progesterone, as can estrogen, and progesterone can come down right down here. And when testosterone levels get too high in a man, it's converted to dehydroxytestosterone, which causes inflammation of the prostate gland. But I'll tell you something very interesting. Zinc inhibits the conversion of testosterone to dehydroxytestosterone. If every man took a zinc supplement every day, there would be no such thing as prostate. Isn't that good news? Is it that simple? Obviously, after the break, I'm going to show you how to bring back the balance, but how simple is that? Where do you find zinc in food? Pumpkin seeds is very high, sesame seeds are very high. It is locked up in grain, but it is released when grain is made by the sourdough or the culturing method. Sourdough is not sour. The sour word is just indicating that it's a cultured food. And as our gardener said to me one day, he said, how can sourdough's bread taste so sweet? It's a cultured food. Sometimes in a man, the estrogen gets up too high, then the testosterone, then the progesterone, and that is when a man can be effeminate. But I guess in America you're not allowed to talk about that, is that right? What about in a woman? In a woman, if estrogen goes too high, maybe then it's progesterone and testosterone. That's when you get this cell proliferator action with the fibroids in the uterus, the cysts on the ovaries, the cervical cancer, the breast cancer. Angelina Jolie did not need to remove her breasts. You see that? All she needed to do was balance her hormones. You know, we've got to get away from chopping all the body parts off. If the breasts are taken off, then the imbalance will be revealed in another part of the body. Sometimes in a woman, testosterone can get up a little bit too high, then estrogen, then progesterone, and when that's happening, that's when the woman can become masculine. Can you see there's a whole lot of scenarios here? And it's not rocket science to look at this and know that the answer to the problem is boosting progesterone. And after the break, I'm going to show you a very simple way how you can do that. So I'm going to give everyone a break now. You've been sitting for an hour. Congratulations. Please come back in 5 minutes, and then I'm going to show you how you can bring back the balance. I mentioned this when I first began the presentation, and I'll mention it again now, and that is thyroid. High estrogen opposes thyroid function. Say again? High estrogen opposes thyroid function. So can you see being on the pill many years ago or any of these things can throw the thyroid out? Let me tell you another couple of things. The thyroid uses iodine for food. And the thyroid needs selenium to convert iodine into thyroxine. Mercury fillings in the mouth, or a high fish diet with high mercury, inhibits that process, because mercury has an affinity for selenium and it can gobble it all up. Now, I hope I didn't lose you on that one. Let me say it again. Your thyroid needs selenium to convert iodine into thyroxine. So if a person has mercury fillings in their mouth or on a high fish diet, getting high mercury, that mercury has an affinity for the selenium. And so the mercury will gobble up all the selenium. So you know what this means? A woman can have a thyroid problem because of the high estrogen, because high estrogen opposes thyroid function. She can have thyroid problems because of the mercury fillings in her mouth or the high fish diet, because it's gobbling up all her selenium, and so she hasn't got the mineral necessary to convert iodine into thyroxine. I was giving this lecture in New York a couple of years ago, and a doctor came up to me. He was 70, and he said, "I've always known that selenium was a cofactor, that there was a hormone influence, but," he said, "what you're telling me tonight, I did not know." That's tragic, isn't it? Because if someone's got hypo or hyperthyroidism and they're put on medication, but the mercury fillings are never addressed, the high fish diet's never addressed, whether they have a hormonal imbalance is never addressed. And can you see that you will never conquer thyroidism unless those two are addressed? And the favourite food for the thyroid gland is iodine. Now, you can get an iodine tincture. It's called Lugol's solution. And you can put 1 drop of Lugol's solution on the inside of your arm. It will make a brown smudge. And then you observe. If it goes within an hour, you are low in iodine. If it goes in 3 hours, you are sort of lightly low in iodine. If the brown smudge is still there 5 hours later, your iodine levels are good. Isn't that a simple test?
And what is the name of that again?
Lugol's solution, Lugols. Yes? Sake of the camera, this man had hyperthyroidism, Graves' disease, and took the iodine. And it healed it. It's a very good book called Iodine, Why You Need It and Why You Can't Live Without It.
I just bought that 2 years ago.
Now, what do you do if it's gone in an hour? You put it on every day till it doesn't go. It's as simple as that. Okay. How do you get the mercury out of the tissues? It's an important point. Let's have a look at how you can get mercury out of the tissues. You need a metal chelator. Now, we call it coriander, you call it cilantro, yeah? And chlorella. Chlorella is an algae. It is a metal chelator. This chelates it out of the tissues, and the cilantro carries it out of the body. So you can get chlorella tablets. And what also is important, because mercury is so damaging on the nerve cell, and the nerve cell's membrane is 70% fat, you need to be having some healthy fats. And the healthiest fats are your coconut oil and the olive oil, and also potato. My husband would be glad to hear this. He's an Irishman. He likes potatoes every meal. Yeah. Yes, that's part of your healthy fats. That is true. Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of fish oils contain mercury. But you can get your omega-3s in your linseed, your flax seeds, but it's your saturated fats that's going to be the best. And your macadamia nuts, you'll have to come to Australia to eat those, won't you? One lady said, I'm on a weight loss diet and I can have 1 macadamia nut a meal. I said, 1 a day. I said, I have 10 a meal. Fat doesn't make you fat. You've probably noticed I eat generous amounts. No, it's the high carbohydrate diet that's causing the fat to be stored in the body. That's the most dangerous fats. Unfortunately, I don't have time to totally explore that subject, but you'll get that subject on my DVDs, and I do also talk about it in my book. So mercury detox, as this lady mentioned, is very important. See, a person is in a very dangerous situation if they've got mercury fillings in their mouth, their cholesterol levels are low, and they've got mercury fillings in their mouth, cholesterol levels are very low, and they're on a fat-free diet. Very dangerous. The Framingham Heart Study. Little town in America, Framingham. It's been going for about 30 years, 25,000 people. It's a very reputable study, often quoted. They found people with high cholesterol levels didn't get Alzheimer's. Everyone get that? I can see some of you are shocked. Yeah, they talk. Yeah. Yeah. Because the brain is the fattiest organ in the body. Loves fat, needs fat. Okay, how can we turn this hormonal balance around? Number one, eliminate. If you don't turn the tap off, you're still going to be mopping up in the other corner. Eliminate the pill. Well, how are we going to stop babies popping out everywhere? Sex is two-part, contraception should be two-part. I believe a woman's role is to know what her body's doing so she can advise her husband, I'm safe tonight, I am not safe tonight. So how does she determine that? There are three ways. The body will give three signs. The first sign is a temperature change. So it's a matter of a woman taking her temperature before she gets out of bed every morning and monitoring it. And she will find over the month that the temperature will do this. It'll drop and go up onto a higher plane. And that drop and up onto a higher plane is an indication that she has begun ovulation. And it will happen around day 14. So monitoring it with her temperature allows her to define it. It might be day 11, it might be day 15. The second sign is that her vaginal mucus will change. Now, when estrogen high, the mucus is usually thick, white, and not as profuse. But when progesterone rises, this special form of mucus is very clear, very stringy, and quite profuse. And as she monitors it every day, just a little test every day with her fingers, she can monitor it, and she will see that the progesterone mucus will start around the same time as she gets this drop and this rise. So making charts, a graph, is important. The third sign is that the cervix changes. So it's a matter of a woman testing it once a day, writing it down, and at first she might not know what it's supposed to do, but as the days go by and as the months go by, she will start to see the changes. My daughter Jessica and her husband Matthew were married for 4 years before baby Amethyst was born. How nice to have some time together before the little darlings appear. The little darlings that can make or break a marriage. How nice. And yet they have not damaged their body in any way by taking any drugs for birth control. And my daughter Amethyst is 10 and a half now, and she's as flat as a board, and at 10 and a half she should be. Yeah? Now my daughter Jessica has 3 little girls now, and they chose exactly the time that they were going to be born. Well, not to the day, but you know what I mean. Now, there's a bit of a break between the last 2 because Jessica did not want to have her baby until her husband had finished their new house. And the house was mostly finished, and the baby was born in a little blow-up bath in their little house a week later. She had home births, yes? Pardon?
Is it okay just to do condoms versus this?
Yes, let me show you. And this is good news for the man. Is that if a woman says, I am not safe tonight, and usually that will be about a week here. But these signs will allow the couple to define it. So when she is fertile, that's when the husband masters the art of withdrawal or uses a condom. And the good news of this is it means he doesn't have to wear a condom all the time. You see, there's no need here and there's no need here. So there's only really a need there. Apparently the Italian men prided themselves in mastering the art of withdrawal so their women didn't get pregnant. So can you see this is a two-part thing here?
Are you imbalanced if you ovulate before that window of time between 4?
Not necessarily. In fact, different things can affect the ovulation time. I know my last child, I ovulated around day 25. And that's the only way he could have possibly been born. But I wasn't doing all of these tests. I was guessing. In fact, at that time, I didn't know about all of this. But my daughters have mastered the art. Wouldn't it be great if schools, young women were taught this? Yeah. Irregular periods. Now, when a girl first gets her period, they could be irregular for, it can be a couple of years before they settle down. But eventually, after a couple of years, they should be regular. And that can be another symptom of a hormonal imbalance. So eliminate the pill, eliminate HRT. As I go through this list here, you will see how you can easily eliminate HRT. Stop meat and its products. If you do want to eat meats and its products, it must be organic. Get the chemicals out of the home. Get it out of your washing detergent, out of your bathroom, out of your laundry, out of your kitchen. Plastics, be very cautious on your plastics. I think we haven't seen anything like the hormonal imbalance that's going to come in the next 10 years. Because you look at babies today, they've got plastic nappies on all the time. My daughters put their babies in bamboo disposable nappies. And you can also get disposable nappies made out of starch. In Australia, there's a brand called Natty. I don't know if you have that in America, but I know my daughter who lives in America, her baby is 4 now, so it's a long time since she used them. But when a mother has a baby, that's a great present. Buy them a couple of packets of natural nappies and buy them a little stainless steel milk bottle with a rubber lid, and buy them a little wooden rattle. So you look at most babies today, plastic nappies, altered cow's milk, heated up in a microwave in a plastic bottle, and all their rattles are all made out of plastic. So little by little, this is all having an effect. And go organic as much as possible, and greatly reduce the wheat. And as I showed you, I touched on it last night, that the wheat was hybridized. That's the problem. But you still can get a wild or field hybrid of the original wheat, and it's called spelt and kamut. So it's very easy to eliminate the wheat today. Number 2, the liver has the ability to detoxify us from excess estrogen. And it takes the estrogen down one of 2 pathways. There's the hydroxy 2 pathway and the hydroxy 16 pathway. If it comes down the hydroxy 2 pathway, it's out. So that's the pathway we want. If it comes down the hydroxy 16 pathway, it comes back into the body 100 times more toxic. So we don't want, we'll call it highway. We don't want highway 16, we want highway 2. So I'm going to give you a list of foods and herbs that encourage highway 2 and discourage highway 16. And one is the cabbage family. Cabbage contains something called indoles. And indoles encourage highway 2, discourage highway 16. Now, if someone has hypothyroidism, They need to keep away from raw of the cabbage family because the cabbage contains goitrogons. I'll write it for you. Yes, because it inhibits thyroid function. So if you've got underactive thyroid gland, keep away from the raw. As soon as you cook the cabbage or cook the broccoli or the cauliflower or the Brussels sprouts, it deactivates the goitrogons. But if someone has hyperthyroidism, overactive thyroid gland, well, they can eat lots of raw cabbage because it'll slow it down. Can you see that? What also stimulates highway 2 and discourages highway 16 is the B vitamins, specifically B6, B9 and B12. Now initially, if a person's looking at bringing about a hormone balance, they will need to supplement with these B vitamins. You get your B vitamins from your whole grains, from your legumes, nuts and seeds, but looking at bringing back a balance when there's an imbalance in hormones, a supplement will be needed initially. Flaxseed. Flaxseed contains lignans, and lignans encourage highway 2 and discourage highway 16. And licorice, and I'm not talking about the candy licorice, I'm talking about the herb licorice. So you could buy the licorice root and make a tea out of it. It's quite a sweet, delicious herb. If you've got high blood pressure, forget the licorice because it can pop blood pressure up a bit if it's high. Number 3. Now what we've done so far is we've turned the tap off. We're stimulating the release of excess estrogen. And in the third one, it's progesterone. In America, you can buy progesterone cream off the shelf. In Australia, it's illegal to sell it unless you're a compounding chemist. It's illegal to prescribe it unless you're a physician. But I meet women every year when I come to America who tell me that the progesterone cream initially really helped. Because remember, boosting progesterone brings all of this under control. But after a while, it's not doing it anymore. That's because if you keep putting progesterone in, the body gets lazy and doesn't make its own. But in Australia, we have a cream called the Anna's Wild Yam Cream. And I know Peggy at Country Life Restaurant, she sells it. And let me show you the value of the Anna's Wild Yam Cream. It contains digestion. And when you apply the Anna's Wild Yam Cream to the skin, the fat cells pick it up, it stimulates this pathway, and so it increases the body's ability to make progesterone. So the beauty of this Anna's Wild Yam Cream is it stimulates your body to make its own, so it is superior. I do buy progesterone cream from America. We order it in boxes. We have a compounding chemist working with us now, so legally we can sell it. But I would say only 5% of women would I advise this. And if I do advise it, it would only be for 2 jars. And those 2 jars would last probably 4 to 5 months. The only time I advise it is, say a woman comes to me, she's just discovered she's got breast cancer, she's having hot flushes every half hour, she needs a kickstart, and that progesterone cream will give it. But after 4 months, before her body gets a little bit lazy, then she can go over to the Anna's Wild Yam Cream, which will stimulate her body to make its own progesterone. So I find 95% of women go well straight on the Anna's Wild Yam Cream, unless they're in a situation where they need a quick kickstart, yes?
Will it help with postnatal depression as well?
Absolutely, because what it will do, The question was, will it help with postnatal depression? You see, postnatal depression is a clear sign of a progesterone deficiency. They've not got enough happy hormone. When a woman's having a lot of miscarriages, it will help to hold that baby in the uterus. If a woman's depressed, she can boost up her happy hormone. If a woman has fibroids in the uterus, she needs the progesterone to get that estrogen down. All the symptoms that I have discussed this evening, and especially the ones I outlined in the first 10 minutes, are all remedied by this. Because you're boosting progesterone, you're stimulating the body, you're working with the body to balance it. That's the beauty of it. So how is it applied? It is applied twice a day. A woman will apply it twice a day for 3 weeks a month. So she stops at period time. So you can see she's applying it for the 3 weeks where the progesterone is the highest. What if a woman is not menstruating anymore? If a woman is not menstruating anymore, she just chooses 1 week of the month where she does not apply the cream. How long would a woman use it for? She would use it for at least 1 year. One lady said to me, I tried the Anna's Wild Yam Cream and it didn't work. I said, how long did you use it for? She said, 2 months. Well, when you've got the balance out with estrogen up here and progesterone down here, after 2 months, it's about like this. And what do we want? We want this. You see, it might have taken many years to get out, but it won't take many years to put it back, but it may take 1 or 2 years. Little by little, the balance will be brought back when you give the body the right conditions. How much? Well, with the jar, you put your finger in up to the first knuckle. It's called a finger dip. And our resident chemist studied this, and it's the exact amount. Just the finger dip in and out again. And that is applied 1 time to the inside of the arms, another time to the chest, another time to the inside of the thighs, another time to the abdomen. You alternate the spots, and that will keep the body reactive. So a woman applies it twice a day when she wakes up in the morning and just before bed. I say to remember it, just put it next to your bed till you get into the habit of it. And tomorrow I'll show you how you can rewire your brain. And you'll see how it takes about 3 weeks to get into the habit. So a woman applies it twice a day for 3 weeks a month. And then she has that 1 week break. Very occasionally, only in about 2% of cases, a rash might develop. And if it does, you just stop it for a month and then just apply it to the soles of your feet. And often after a couple of months of that, the body's getting used to it and you can try it to the skin, but that's only in a small amount of cases. One lady said to me, I've been on it for 7 years, is that a problem? I said, no. Can you have too much happy hormone? I would like to suggest not. There's no known toxic dose of progesterone, but there is definitely a toxic dose of estrogen. Now, you may have heard of the book written by Dr. John Lee called What Your Doctor May Not Tell You About Menopause. And he's probably the first author who revealed this. There's another excellent book, another American author, her name's Cheryl Selman, and she wrote a book called Hormone Heresy. There's probably even more books written about it now, but they are all basically saying what I have presented to you tonight. Showing what causes the imbalance and how you can bring the balance back. Yes?
How do you bring the balance back for men? Do they take the Anna's Wild Cream?
Yes, I'll tell you about men. But before I finish men, go to men, let me finish with the women. When I was teaching in the Bronx a few years ago, I put a 9-year-old girl on the Anna's Wild Yam Cream. She had her periods at 9. She developed breasts at 8. That's a hormonal imbalance. I met a 92-year-old woman who was on the Anna's Wild Yam Cream for osteoporosis. You see, progesterone it boosts bone building cells. So anyone with osteoporosis should be on the Anna's Wild Yam Cream. And how often, when someone has osteoporosis, is a hormone link considered? So what about men? Because men are not cyclic, they just apply it once a day without a break. Cheryl Selman gives the analogy of men are like the sun. They rise every morning, they conquer the day, and they go down again at night. Women are like the moon. Sometimes they're full, sometimes they're half, sometimes they're a little slither. That is true, but a woman should never, ever be to the point of being very cranky. If she's really severe at this time of the month, that's a clear sign of a hormonal imbalance. So with a man, he just applies it once a day. I had a man do our program who had prostate cancer, and he was on a 3-monthly injection to balance his hormones. His testosterone was too high. He had developed breasts at the age of 66, and he was getting hot flushes, 4 or 5 a day. So he made a decision to try the Anna's Wild Yam Cream. He did something else. He implemented the 8 laws of health. What are the 8 laws of health? They're the basic requirements that the body needs for healing. So the number 1 is pure air. That's the most important, fresh air. Number 2 is sunshine. Number 3 is abstemishness, which means not taking anything into the body that will harm it and taking in moderation the good things. So what he did was he stopped the refined sugar, he stopped all hybridized wheat, he stopped the caffeine. He was not a drinker and he was not a smoker, but he stopped the caffeines and the refined sugars. That's the 3rd law. 4th law is rest. Instead of being on the internet at midnight, he started to go to bed early. In fact, at the moment, summertime, we should be asleep by 10. So it's between the hours of 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. that the hours of power, the hours where your body recharges and regenerates, is happening. In the wintertime, it's between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. So he started to go to bed early. He started to exercise. He began to implement an exercise program every day. He began to eat a plant-based diet. Now, he was a vegetarian, but he was eating far too much wheat and he was not eating enough protein. So he began to implement the legumes. Some people say to me, I can't handle the legumes, they give me wind. I said, that tells me that either they're not prepared properly or you need some help in your gut to be able to digest properly. How do you prepare them properly? They should be soaked, and then they should be thoroughly rinsed. And then they should be cooked, and you ready for this? Thoroughly rinsed again. That's dirty water. Get rid of that water. What I have is I have a pot with the sauce and a pot with the legumes. And if I'm making soup where you want the legumes to cook with the veggies, you might just cook those legumes for even 20 minutes, then rinse them thoroughly, and then put them in with all the other vegetables. Most people don't do that, and that's where the problems arise. And if you do that and you've still got a problem, then you may need to go on some herbs that will boost your digestion. So what this man did was he began to implement more vegetables, more legumes, nuts and seeds, less grain, and he eliminated the wheat. He started to drink more water. He got back into reading his Bible. So this is the 8th law, which is trust in divine power. He discovered the truth of Isaiah 26 verse 3 that says, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, he whose mind is stayed upon thee, because he trusteth in thee." And 1 Peter 5:7, "Casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you." So this is what he did. And his wife emailed me 10 months later. She said, "I have got a new husband." She said, "The breasts have gone down. The hot flushes have stopped. He recently had a test for his testosterone levels and they're the lowest they've been for years." Wow. What did he do? He just gave his body the right conditions and it naturally balanced back the hormones. You see that? Another man said to me, and I don't know how else to explain this delicately, he said, "This cream just puts lead in my pencil." Got that? So it can remedy penile dysfunction. It can boost sperm count. It's worthwhile trying because you've got nothing to lose, because there is no toxic dose of progesterone. In her book, Hormone Heresy, Cheryl Selman, she has a page where she lists all the effects of progesterone, all the effects of estrogen, and they're virtually opposite. So does Dr. John Lee in his book, What Your Doctor May Not Tell You About Menopause. Remember what I said about estrogen, it's not the enemy, it's only when it's out of control. The Australian Cancer Foundation have issued a warning. Estrogen is a known human carcinogen because of its cell proliferator action. You just got to get it down. I was consulting with a woman in the Bronx once, and she had just had a fibroid the size of a grapefruit taken out of her uterus. She said, "Do I need to have a test to see if my hormones are out of balance?" I said, "No, you don't need a test." You have all the symptoms of a hormonal imbalance. Most of the time, a blood test is given or taken. But all the hormones in the blood at any given time aren't all biologically active. So the most accurate test is really a saliva test. But as I say to women, I never do hormone tests. It's quite obvious. I consulted with a woman recently. She had breast cancer. She'd had cysts taken off her ovaries when she was 40. She had a thyroid problem. And I said, "You have a hormonal imbalance. You have all the symptoms of a hormonal imbalance." Now you can get 100 women all with a hormonal imbalance, and the symptoms can be slightly different. One woman that came to our health retreat, she got migraines before every period. I said to her, "You have a hormonal imbalance." She was 50. For 25 years she'd suffered like this, never realizing that the hormones were out of balance. Can you see what I said when I first began tonight? That this is often the missing link when someone is not well. Genetics loads the gun, but it is lifestyle that pulls the trigger. Now what I want to do is I want to take a moment to explain to you one of the most effective exercise treatments that you can do. And you're going to love this exercise program. Because this exercise program, if you do it exactly as I described, will take you 12 minutes. Is that good news? And it's actually more powerful than a 5K jog. It's called interval training. Have you heard of interval training? As the name implies, interval training is periods of high intensity and periods of recovery for a cycle. Most of the experiments or the tests done on interval training, it's on an exercise bike. And especially for people who have ankle, feet, knee, hip problems, the exercise bike can be the best way to do it. And especially for people who are a little unsettled on their feet, they're holding on. And Tabata was a Japanese physiologist, and he got his Olympian girls who were figure skating to do 20 seconds high intensity, a 60-second recovery time for a cycle of 6. He found when it came time for the event, his girls had an edge. It just gave them that edge, and of course that edge can be the difference between gold, silver, bronze and no medal at all. You will find that many trainers are training their athletes in interval training today. And there's an excellent book, and it's an American author again. It's called Body by Science by Dr. Doug McGuff. And he's a cardiovascular doctor. And he started to do this for his heart patients. And he put them on a 30-second high intensity with a 90-second recovery for a cycle of 6. When you read his book, it's thrilling. Because he shows that every cell in the body starts to work more effectively when you begin the interval training. Now what I'm going to do to show you what happens, I'm going to go to the CBD, remember the central business district of the human body, the cell. Now when the glucose goes into the cell, it goes through a 20-step pathway. And this 20-step pathway, it's called the glycolytic pathway, it delivers to us 2 units of energy. The end result of that 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. And pyruvate is the chemical form of glucose that gets fed into the powerhouse. For the technical amongst us, this is the mitochondria, specifically the Krebs cycle. So this chemical form of glucose gets fed into the powerhouse, called the powerhouse, because this 8-step pathway delivers to us a whopping 36 units of energy. Wow! What makes the difference? It's oxygen. So this is the oxygenated pathway. This pathway has no oxygen. Over on the side, in the cell, it looks like a little bunch of grapes, but they're little molecules of glycogen. And they're quick-release glucose stores if you're running out of glucose. Now, yesterday I ate breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and I had nothing in the evening. And I worked very hard yesterday evening for 2 hours delivering. I went to bed, I was asleep by 9:30, I think I was. I woke up at 5:15, which is my habit. As a Christian, I pray and do some Bible study in the morning. And then at 6 o'clock, I went to do my interval training. And when I'm getting to the second set, or even the third set of high intensity, I'm running out of fuel very quickly. And so my body starts plucking the glycogen. That's glycogen. It's a name given to quick-release glucose stores. Do you ever wonder how you get the energy to do your exercise in the morning? Now, if after the 4th or 5th set I'm running out of glycogen stores, I've got another fantastic fuel supply. You may have heard of it. It's called fat. And so when you run out of glycogen, then the body starts to go to the fat stores. That's the good news. And so even though I've had no fuel going into my mouth for quite a long time, I have the energy to do my exercise program. That's why this is one of the best chips for weight loss. Now what's happening in this cell is happening in your brain cell, it's happening in your liver cell, it's happening in your pancreatic cell, it's happening in every part of the body. And so every single organ in the body starts to work more effectively and efficiently with this interval training. Doug McGuff found that his depressed patients were coming off their antidepressants. What are their brain cells starting to get? Instead of 2 units of energy, 36. His patients with diabetes were coming off their medication. The pancreas is starting to work more effectively because it's starting to produce more energy. So I began to implement this when I read about it, but 30 seconds is a long time when you're running for your life. And that's the sort of running you've got to do. It's high intensity. Do you know, I find now I can do the 30 seconds a lot easier. Now 30 seconds isn't as hard on a bike, but when you're running, after about 20 seconds the body starts screaming, usually, enough. And I thought, how do I suggest this for our guests who are mostly not fit? If I'm struggling and I'm maybe average, a little bit above average fitness. And then a friend of mine heard a talkback radio show where a group of doctors got about 30 people and put them on a program. They were all obese, diabetic and high blood pressure. And they got them to do interval training, but they got them to do a 7 seconds high intensity, a 14 seconds recovery time for a cycle of 7. Wow. I think anyone can do 7 seconds high intensity. I was very interested because I'm a Bible student, and all through the Bible there's a numerical design, and you often get the factor of 7. I thought anyone can do that. 7 seconds high intensity. But as you move, you will find the body can go faster, but your recovery time is your indicator of fitness. So the very fit person might need 10 minutes recovery from 7 seconds high intensity. But that's all right because it won't remain at that. That's why note your recovery time. How do you know when you're ready to do another set of high intensity? Who will tell you? You don't need little equipments and things. It's when you can consider it again. I think I can do it again. So that's high intensity, that's running for your life, that's cycling as hard as you go, and that's doing push-ups. In fact, you can do your resistance training for some of your cycles. What's recovery time? For someone who's very unfit, it might be... For someone who's quite fit, it might be, oh, I can't jump with all this equipment on me, but it might be little jogs. So my recovery time is I'm just walking. Whereas my high intensity, I'm running as hard and as fast as I can go, and I look for the hill to do that, then you'll really get high intensity. Can you see that?
So are you hopping on and off a bike?
I'm running on the road.
Oh, okay.
But if you're doing the interval training on a bike, you just pedal very fast and then you pedal slow for your recovery time.
So you can run as fast as you can for 7 seconds.
Yeah. For someone that's but I suggest, you see, at the moment, this morning, I did about 6 cycles of high intensity. I did 130. I did a couple of 25, and I did a few of 20. So you play with it, and it keeps the body reactive. Now, what I'm about to tell you now is one of the keys to why this is so powerful. Now, this pathway is a very fast pathway. And it is this pathway here where cancer and fungus cells run. And that's why they can consume 15 times the glucose. This pathway is slow. Now, when you're going to high intensity, even your first set, your 20-step pathway speeds up. Your 8-step pathway speeds up, but there's a rate-setting enzyme in there that will always keep this one faster than this one. So more pyruvate is being made than can be fed into the powerhouse. So your body stores it as lactic acid. You've heard of lactic acid? Now you're ready for the best part of this whole presentation on interval training. When you're in recovery time, which may be just like this or going slow, your liver converts the lactic acid back to pyruvate and feeds it into the powerhouse. So when you're in recovery time, you're burning just as much fuel as fast as when you're going for it. Isn't that good news? Doug McGuff, in his book, Body by Science, he unlocks the door and reveals this. And I have made it as simple as I can. Believe me, I had to read the explanation about 10 times before I got it. And then I have simplified it even more because I believe that it is essential to understand that, because it explains why it is such a powerful form of exercise. So when the person's doing the 5K jog, what's happening to their lactic acid, students? It's building up. Have you read in the newspaper and you hear stories of a 45-year-old man doing a 5K jog every morning, keels over, has a heart attack and dies? You see, yesterday I showed you how, well, I touched on it, how cancer, fungus, disease thrives in an acid environment. With the 5K jog, can you see the acid buildup happening in his body? And if he had a steak last night and a glass of wine and a coffee to finish and a bowl of ice cream, which are all highly acid foods, wakes up in the morning and he's got this acid residue in his cells from that high acid food, then he does his 5K jog. Can you see the acid buildup tips the scales and... A friend of mine named Dave came and did our program. He said, Barbara, you're not going to like it, but I do not have an hour to do a 5K jog. I said, okay, Dave. You see, at the first consultation, I'm just the scribe. I just write everything down. And when I gave this lecture, I said, see, Dave, you don't need an hour. All you need is do the maths on that. 12 minutes, 15 minutes, that's all you need to do. And you will get more out of that 15 minutes than a 1 hour 5K jog. And that's why the trainers are training their athletes in this form of exercise today, because it is so powerful. This is a form of exercise that will get your body up into a better, more effective and more efficient rate of running. And it's going to get to the point where we're not going to be able to hold you down. How are you going to feel if every single one of your 100 trillion cells in your body has got enough oxygen to run there? How are you going to feel? Forget the coffee.
You don't have to elaborate, but I wasn't here yesterday, so I just have a question. Did you happen to talk about at all, I know you talked about cancer, do you happen to talk about the relationship between pH and the oxygen?
I do have a whole lecture on acid alkaline, and there's a chapter in my book on acid alkaline. But it is true, and I'll give you this just little tidbit, that our cells should be running at a pH of 6.5. But in disease, cancer, fungus, they run at a cell pH of 5.5. Now I'm talking about the cellular pH. Blood pH is constantly kept within a range by the lungs and the kidneys. I'm not talking about blood pH, I'm talking about the cellular pH. Now this cellular pH, there's a drop of 1 point. But that drop of 1 point means 60% less oxygen available at the cellular level. Wow. Yes?
How do you test for the cellular level?
The urine and the saliva can test. But I give caution for that, because it's going to be different when you wake up in the morning, to 2 hours after a meal, to if you have a highly stressful situation, to if you're dehydrated. A whole lot of things affect it. So in my lecture, you can go to YouTube and see my lecture on acid alkaline, or get the DVDs, or buy the book. It all explains it. You can't wait till tomorrow morning, can you? Now, I was out there early this morning because I knew that me implementing this interval training will have a lot to do with my ability to deliver to you tonight. You see that? Dr. Neil Nedley, he states that when someone's depressed, you start to put them on this interval training, high intensity, oxygenating the body so that the brain cells are sparky, they can recover from depression. Wow. Yes?
When I was in the Boy Scouts a few years ago, they had to call the Scout Walk.
That's
which is
right.
that very thing.
That's right. In fact, I was a girl guide, and we used to do what was called Scouts Paste.
That's it.
And you walk from one telegraph pole to the next, and then you run next telegraph pole to the next. So you could just do Scout's pace on your morning walk. Now you look at children in the playground, you'll see interval training, as long as they haven't got this thing in their hand going like that. Yeah, the only thing that's exercising is the thumb. You'll see interval training. When I was a little girl in the school playground, we played hopscotch. My turn, high intensity, and then I stand back and then the next person has a go. Or we do skippings, high intensity, then I get out, the next person have a go. Or we do elastics. 2 girls have had elastics around their legs. Do you know that one? And then one child jumps in and out of the elastics and the leg comes and pulls the elastic there and do designs, yeah. That's interval training. Now you go to the African plains, no animal jogs. No animal jogs. They either high intensity or recovery. And you have a look at the little pools where they're all eating. They're all slow and the line's crouched down, quiet, and then the line jumps up and you've got high intensity everywhere. I'm very thankful to Doug McGuff for taking us inside the cell and showing the powerful effect, and explains why it has a powerful effect. See, we are just a bunch of cells. So when you start implementing this, you'll see better, you'll hear better. Your brain will work better. You'll digest better. Your pancreas will work more efficiently. Your liver will work more efficiently. Your colon will work more efficiently. Your bones will get stronger. Your muscles will get stronger. Your heart will get stronger. Age has got nothing to do with this one. Did everyone hear that?
Yippee.
So whether you're 9 or 90, it's a not negotiable subject. I believe the interval training must be implemented. 24 hours in a day, students. It's the best insurance policy that you can make. Have you seen what the Olympic athletes do in training for the Olympic Games? Well, we're training for something far more important than the Olympic Games. And in the Olympic Games, there's only one can take home gold. But in this race, everyone can receive the prize. We're training for life. And we're training for the latter years. And I don't know about you, but I want to enjoy those latter years. I used to think 60 was old, but now that I'm 62, I don't think it's old. I want my daughter Jessica to come out one morning, and I'm 99 maybe, like my grandmother was, and I haven't come in for breakfast. I'm sure I garden in the morning, and I'm lying on the path. Oh, I'm dead. Maybe I've got a gardenia in my hand. What a nice way to die. Not in every case, but in the majority of cases, the way we live dictates the way we die. So we've got to go into training for those latter years. And this interval training has a powerful effect on balancing out those hormones. It's part of the program. Yes?
Moses died healthy.
Yes, Moses died healthy. In fact, you won't read of senile dementia in the Bible.
And that's one of the greatest things.
That's one of the greatest things. You see, the human body will deteriorate, but the human brain need never deteriorate. And that's what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow night. I'm going to be talking about the mind, and I'm going to show you how your brain need never deteriorate, and I'm going to show you how your brain should get smarter and wiser with age. That's the good news. So thank you for your attention tonight, ladies and gentlemen, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Thank you.